I'm going to use myself as an example of demon extroverted feeling. This is someone who has extroverted feeling, emotions and values in a broad scope at the collective level, all right? But they're going to be more reluctant to use it. And you also see that when I'm doing this social justice warrior shit, it's not do you do the social justice warrior shit or not. It's not that, okay? How are you doing it, and then what are you fucking pointing to? So you're going to see in this example that I dredged up from way back the fuck when. I'm still going to use my SE savior. I'm going to point to all this evidence first, and then I'll get to the fucking NI conclusion towards the fucking end. But also is going to be, I'm focusing on what gets in the way of the individuals doing something. Okay? What causes people physical harm? All right? And you'll also see a line of reasoning step by step. This is how it goes. This is how it goes. This is how it goes. All right? Compare that to some people who are social justice warriors and they're saying you shouldn't use AAVE. And the reason why they're saying it is functionally not because it's getting in the way of anything that, the black community is doing, but it's hurting their fucking feelings, is what it fucking comes down to. All right? You're going to look at that. And yeah, I know that shit's important too, but that's not what I tend to focus on. Look at this shit. You can isolate the fucking variable here and see what are they focusing on, and then how are they presenting information. First off, let's start, just in case you don't know, let's start by showing how the white population is so overwhelmingly in the majority that it's absolutely fucking ridiculous. According to the 2020 census, 75.5% white alone, all right? That's how much of a fucking difference there is. And to answer your question about if they're a predictable voting bloc, let's first point out how the majority of white voters, as of an article in 2016, have voted Republican for the last 50 years. And as you pointed out yourself, that continued in 2020, so we know that, all right? Now let's also talk about gerrymandering, where when they redraw the census, or where they redraw the district lines to manipulate the outcome of an election, and how that still goes on today. Absolutely, white people are a predictable voting bloc for those reasons, okay? Now, let's talk about how military recruitment is mostly done and targeted at minorities. And you see the effects of this today, and you see the effects of this seemingly increasing in recent years, okay? And also a creator on here who I'll tag has talked about how basically within the military there were some racist policies which make it so minorities can't actually perform at the same level as white people. And that's she specifically talked about how black women had their hair regulated to such a degree because how it literally grew out of their heads was called unprofessional. So they would end up at that time having to wear wigs, heavy wigs, and as a consequence, they're burning fucking hot. They got these big old giant heavy things on. They're not running as quickly. They're not performing as well. And now we can pretend that it's a meritocracy, but in actuality, the ones who get promotions, more likely, are white, based on a completely bullshitted meritocracy. All right? Keeping minorities at lower rank would also mean that they're dying at higher rates. Now, let's talk about immigration laws. If you haven't looked up the immigration laws, do it. And then also look at how there's this huge financial barrier. I'll put it on the screen, showing you how much it actually realistically would cost for someone to immigrate to the United States. In other words, the myth of people coming over here to basically seek opportunity is just a fucking lie. It's fabrication. It doesn't happen anymore. And if it ever did, historically, and they ever saw that basically non-white people have the same opportunities. Guess what they did? They did things like the Chinese Exclusion Act, which I'll put on the screen. Let's talk about how minorities, and especially black people, are held in prisons so that they're not participating in the market for longer. And we have a massive prison industrial complex, by the way, just to throw that out there. Anyway, all of these things, actually there's one more thing I'm going to mention before I sum this up. Native Americans on reservations, because of the laws as they are, have often been denied voting rights because they've made it entirely, completely fucking difficult for them to have access to voting. Here's an example of how that works. I'll put it on the fucking screen. You can pause or do whatever you want. So anyway, all of these things have served to keep the population of minorities down, especially to keep the population of voting minorities down, to serve the interests of white supremacy. These are things that have realistically happened. And a lot of people want to say, oh, it's a long time ago, we should just get past it. Or a lot of people want to pull up people like Morgan Freeman and say, oh, if we just stop talking about racism, we just stop talking about it, it'll just go away. If we stop talking about these things, though, they'll fucking continue. That's realistically what's going to happen. So anyway, I'm not suggesting removing white people, because if you haven't noticed, I am white myself. I'm not trying to get kicked out. All right? But I am suggesting fixing some of these institutional and systemic problems which have kept white people in the overwhelming majority to serve the interests of namely Republicans, but also Republicans and Democrats, two wings of the same fucking bird, perpetuating this two-party system. All right? Let's stop all of that shit. All of it. Give people an equal chance. That's what I would like to see. All right? Love and gratitude. Done.